What if a conversation with a complete stranger could change your life forever? One rainy night, a young woman boarded the last train home, feeling lost, lonely, and unsure about her future. She thought it would be just another ordinary journey. But before the train reached its final stop, she would meet a man whose words would stay with her for the rest of her life. A man she would never see again. And years later, she would realize that this unexpected meeting on a quiet train had changed the direction of her entire life. This is the emotional story of Sarah, a rainy night, and a stranger who appeared at exactly the right moment. Late one rainy evening, a young woman named Sarah rushed into a train station. The sky was dark, and the sound of rain echoed across the empty platform. She had just finished a long day at work and wanted nothing more than to go home and rest. The station was unusually quiet. Only a few people waited for the last train of the night. Sarah stood near the edge of the platform, holding her small bag and watching the rain fall. A few minutes later, the train arrived. The doors opened slowly. Sarah stepped inside and looked around. Most of the seats were empty. She chose a window seat and sat down quietly. As the train began to move, she watched the city lights blur through the wet glass. She felt tired. Not just physically tired, but emotionally tired too. Life had not been easy lately. She had recently moved to a new city for work. She missed her family. She missed her friends. Every day felt the same. Wake up, work, go home, sleep. The excitement she once felt about her future seemed to have disappeared. As the train continued its journey, an elderly man entered from the next carriage and sat across from her. He wore a simple brown coat and carried a small suitcase. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. The train moved quietly through the night. Then the man smiled gently. "Long day?" he asked. Sarah looked up and nodded. "Very long." The man laughed softly. "I remember those days." His voice was warm and friendly. Sarah returned a small smile. Something about him felt comforting. The conversation started slowly. The man introduced himself as Mr. Thompson. He was 72 years old and had spent most of his life traveling around the country. Sarah listened politely. Soon, the two strangers found themselves talking like old friends. Mr. Thompson asked about her job. Sarah explained that she worked in a large company and had recently moved away from home. "Are you happy?" he asked. The question surprised her. She paused for a moment. "I don't know," she admitted. The old man nodded thoughtfully. Many people spend years pretending they know the answer to that question. Outside, the rain continued to fall. Inside the train, the quiet conversation continued. Sarah found herself sharing things she had never told anyone. She spoke about her worries, her fears, her loneliness, her uncertainty about the future. Mr. Thompson listened carefully without interrupting. When she finished, he smiled. "Can I tell you a story?" he asked. Sarah nodded. The old man looked out the window for a moment before speaking. "When I was young, I had a dream. I wanted to become a writer." Sarah leaned forward slightly. "But I was afraid," he continued. "Afraid of failure. Afraid of what people might think. So I chose a safer path. I worked in an office for 40 years. He smiled sadly. "It was a good life. But every day I wondered what would have happened if I had been brave enough to try." Sarah listened carefully. The train passed through another small town. Lights flashed briefly outside the window. "Did you ever become a writer?" she asked. Mr. Thompson smiled. "Eventually." Sarah looked surprised. The old man opened his suitcase and pulled out a book. His name was printed on the cover. I published my first book when I was 68. Sarah stared at him. 68. He laughed. Yes. Sometimes we think life is over because we missed one opportunity. But life keeps giving us new chances. Sarah held the book in her hands. The words touched her deeply. For the first time in months, she felt something she had not felt for a long time. Hope. The train continued through the darkness. Station after station passed by. Neither of them noticed how much time had gone by. Mr. Thompson shared stories from his travels. Stories about people he had met, places he had visited, lessons he had learned. Some stories were funny. Some were emotional. All of them carried simple wisdom. Sarah found herself smiling more than she had in weeks. At one point, she asked him a question. What is the most important lesson you've learned? The old man became quiet. For a few seconds, he simply watched the rain outside. Then he answered, most people spend their lives waiting, waiting to feel ready, waiting for the perfect moment, waiting for fear to disappear. He looked directly at her. But the perfect moment never comes. The people who change their lives are the ones who take the first step while they are still afraid. Sarah thought carefully about those words. They felt true, very true. Soon an announcement echoed through the train. The next station would be Sarah's stop. She suddenly felt disappointed. She did not want the conversation to end. The train slowly began to slow down. Passengers prepared to leave. Sarah stood up and picked up her bag. Thank you, she said sincerely. For what? Mr. Thompson asked. For reminding me that it's not too late. The old man smiled warmly. It's never too late. The train stopped. The doors opened. Sarah stepped onto the platform. For a moment, she turned back. Mr. Thompson waved goodbye through the window. Then the doors closed. The train slowly disappeared into the rainy night. Sarah stood there watching until the lights vanished completely. She never saw him again, but she never forgot him. Over the following months, something changed. Sarah began taking small risks. She joined new activities. She met new people. She started working on dreams she had ignored for years. The fear did not disappear, but she stopped waiting for it to disappear. She moved forward anyway. 1 year later, Sarah visited a bookstore. As she walked between the shelves, something caught her eye. A familiar name. Mr. Thompson. His latest book sat proudly on display. Sarah smiled. She bought a copy immediately. When she returned home, she opened the book. Inside the first page was a quote. It read, "Life does not reward those who wait forever. Life rewards those who begin." Sarah closed the book and smiled. The memory of that rainy train ride returned instantly. A simple conversation between two strangers. A conversation that lasted only a few hours. Yet it changed the direction of an entire life. Sometimes the people who impact us most are not those who stay forever. Sometimes they are the strangers we meet for only a moment that arrives unexpectedly, a moment that leaves behind a lesson we carry for the rest of our lives. And sometimes, the last train home carries exactly the person we need to meet.